Well, I'm going to tell you the story of Michael and the oranges. This is a sad story, but it's the kind of story that hopefully will inspire you to go out there and make this a better world through behavior analysis. Because you're going to be trained and you're going to know some things and be aware of some things that you think might be common sense to people. I used to think they were common sense, but you know, common sense is not so common. And I used to be very surprised by stories like this one when I ran into situations like this. And after working 36 years in the field or more, 37, time passes quickly when you're having fun, I have stopped being surprised. I have never stopped being saddened by it. I am still emotionally affected by it, and it makes me upset and I cry. But you know, I'm no longer amazed or surprised that there's so much stupidity in the world out there. And I'm not talking about the people that we work with developmental disabilities. I'm talking about the people who work with them. So here's the story of Michael and the oranges. Michael was about to turn 22, and he was going to graduate with a special diploma from the special school he attended. Michael was severely or profoundly mentally handicapped. He was in a profoundly mentally handicapped classroom in a special center school for people who were profoundly mentally handicapped. Now, this was 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. But you know, I have been in classrooms like this more recently, and I still see the same thing happening that I saw 15, 20 years ago. So it's not like, hey, that was so long ago, that's why you saw what you saw. But now maybe more people are in regular schools or mainstreamed even and so forth. But stuff like what I saw happening still happens. And here's what happened. Well, Michael's mother called me because she was concerned that Michael was graduating from high school and that Michael had not learned a whole lot in all his 20 or so years of schooling. And that she didn't see that he was ready to go out and join the workforce. And she wondered what Michael was going to do during the day after he graduated from high school. And she knew that if Michael was going to do anything, he probably needed to learn some things. And it is sad and unfortunate that she waited till he was almost 22 to call somebody like me to come help. But this mom didn't know any better. She didn't know about ABA. She didn't know about behavior analysis. And it wasn't until Michael was about to graduate that she started thinking about, well, what's going to happen to Michael after he graduates? What are we going to do with him during the day? Because I work and I can't afford a child care, and he's not a child anymore. What are we going to do with him during the day? And that's the main reason she called me, not any other reason. Although she did say that, he also tantrums quite a bit, and maybe we could get help with his tantrums as well. But she said, and she was a pretty smart lady, she says, I know Michael tantrums when he wants something, and he can't tell me what he wants. And it's like I have to keep trying to give him different things until I find what he wants. And when I find what he finally wants, then he stops tantruming, and then I know, that's what Michael wants. So she was smart enough to figure that out. And she says, I always wanted Michael to learn to talk, but they told me he couldn't learn to talk. Then I found out that maybe Michael could learn to sign, and they said he couldn't learn to sign. Then I found out, oh, maybe Michael can learn to ask for things in other ways. There's other ways to get him to ask for things. And they've been working with him in school for 20 years, and he still hasn't learned to ask for a single thing. And I know that he gets frustrated because he's asking for something by his tantrums, and I don't know what he's asking for. Very common kind of circumstance. Now, Michael I went to his school and I read his IEP, his individual education plan, and Michael had a goal in his IEP, and the goal was Michael will ask for orange independently on 8 out of 10 trials. And that was the IEP goal. And I looked to see the previous IEP, and it had the same goal, and at the end of the year, they said not met. And then I looked at the previous year, and I saw the same goal, and it said not met. And then the previous year, and I saw the same goal, and not met. And you get the idea. I went back through the years, and year after year, for the last umpteen years, he had the same IEP goal. Michael will learn to ask for orange independently, or Michael will ask for orange independently on 8 out of 10 trials. Now, the mother had said that Michael loved oranges, and that she was the one that insisted that they continue to try to teach him to ask for orange. Now, I talked to the teacher, and the teacher says, you know, the only reason we keep that IEP goal there is because the mom insists, and she will not sign the IEP unless we have that IEP goal in there. And of course, if it's in the IEP, we are going to continue to work with it. So I have been his teacher for the last 5 years, and I have worked on it every day for the last 5 years. And he still hasn't learned to ask for orange. And the teacher before me, she worked with him for years in the same, and she wasn't able to teach him. And when he was younger, he had speech and language pathologists working with him, and the speech and language pathologists were never able to teach him to ask for orange or for anything else. They were not able to teach him to label anything, or to talk, or to sign, or to communicate in any way. And all the reports say that Michael lacks the cognitive capacity to learn language. And I agree with those reports. They've been saying it for years. Michael lacks the cognitive capacity to learn language. But I will continue to try to teach him language, but he's never going to learn. Okay, teacher, Mrs. So-and-so, please show me how you're going about teaching Michael to ask for orange. Okay, the teacher comes out and says, here, I'm going to show you. I do this several times a day. I get an orange, and she went and got an orange, and the orange was a whole orange. It had the peel in it. And she takes this orange to Michael, and Michael is like rocking back and forth and doing this heavy hand thing like this, having a good old time. And she puts in front of Michael a plastic orange. We'll make believe this bell is the plastic orange. It's an augmented communication device. And then she brings the orange and she puts it in front of Michael. As soon as she brings the orange, Michael looks up at the orange and tries to grab it, but she keeps it back. And then she says, Michael, what do you want? Orange! And then she takes his hand and she guides his hand to the augmented communication device that looks like an orange. Now, instead of it ringing like a bell, the augmented communication device says, "Orange, please." Nothing wrong with that, by the way. So don't laugh at that. So far, everything's okay here. Whether the prompting strategy was perfect or whatever, I'm not going to get into now. But she manually guided him, and it did say orange. But this is what happened. Then she said, "Good asking for orange, Michael. I'm going to get you an orange." And she took that orange, and there was a sink in the classroom, and she took it to the sink. She washed the outside of the orange. Then she took a knife and a plate, and she peeled the orange. Then she cut up the orange in little pieces. And then she brought the cut up orange in little pieces back to Michael and gave it to him. At the time that she brought it back, Michael was rocking and handshaking like so. But as soon as she brought the orange back, then he grabbed it and quickly devoured it. He devoured the whole thing. And I was frankly amazed. And so I said, all right. Now is this the way that you do it, and you're teaching him to ask for orange? And she said, yeah. And I asked, do you do it the same way every time? She said, oh yes, we have to have consistency here. And I said, would you mind very much if you do it a second time? You say you do it several times a day. Would you mind do it again, just so I can see? And I asked that because I frankly couldn't believe what I saw. And she actually did the same thing again. She brought him the whole orange. She showed it to him. Orange, please. And then she walked away with the orange and went and washed it and peeled it and cut it. And then brought it back a couple of minutes later when Michael was self-steaming again. And then he ate it. Okay. And Michael, no wonder, had not learned how to ask for orange. But the teacher had no clue. By the way, later on I found out the teacher had never taken a course in the principles of learning. A class on the basic principles of learning is not required in most education programs in this country, or probably in many countries, and it's not even required in special ed. Let me know. I have a niece who has both a bachelor's and a master's in special ed, and never did she take a class on the principles of learning. Never a class. She has never had a class to this day on it. I've had to teach them to her myself. But anyway, I asked the teacher, would you mind if I work for Michael for a little while? I am going to see if I can teach him to ask for orange. I said, you're not going to teach him to ask for orange. We've been trying for almost 20 years. And he lacks the cognitive capacity to learn language. So what I do, I says, may I have a few oranges? And she said, fine. So I washed them, I peeled them, I cut them up, and I got a whole big bowl full of little pieces of oranges. And I went over to Michael, and I tried to replicate what the teacher did, except with one difference, that instead of when he asked for orange, that I walked away with the orange and then brought it back a couple of minutes later. As soon as he went like that with the prompt, even though I prompted it, when I had washed my hands and I had gloves, I stuck a piece of orange right in his mouth. I didn't even bother to give it to him in his hand. I just stuck it right in his mouth. Maybe not totally hygienic, but I wanted to make sure that I got it in there fast. And then I did it again. Orange in the mouth. Again, orange in the mouth. Again, orange in the mouth. Again, orange in the mouth. Then I started again, and actually I just put it in front of him and he ate it. Well, in about 10 minutes time, I was showing Michael the orange and saying, what do you want, Michael? And without any prompting, he was going like that. And then I'd give him the orange. And then even when I walked away with the orange, he went like that. And then I came back and gave him the orange. And then I walked away with the orange, and he went like that, and I came back and gave him an orange. And then I showed the teacher and says, here, watch this. And how many trials? We got more than 10 trials out of 10 trials. And the goal had been 8 out of 10. And I replicated it several times. And I showed her, okay, do you think Michael has met the goal? Now I shouldn't have probably shown off like that. It says, is he asking for orange independently? Is that what you mean by asking for orange independently? Oh yeah. He's asking for orange independently. I am amazed. But you know what? I think his mud put him on a new meds. I think his meds must have kicked in, and now he's got some brain cells finally working. That's what she told me. She had no idea that it was the notion of temporal contiguity here, and the fact that I delivered the consequence immediately after the response instead of waiting. Because initially, in fact, the consequence for asking for orange was the orange disappeared and went away for a while. And she had no clue. So was this a case of Michael lacking the cognitive capacity to learn language? No. How am I going to diagnose this? What's the diagnosis here? Actually, it is a case of dysthesia. Dysthesia is one of the teaching disorders. You know, we have this whole manual, and I've got all the learning disabilities. It's got all the developmental disabilities. You know what? What we need is a manual, not of learning disabilities and developmental disabilities. We need this other manual over here. That's the manual of teaching disabilities. So let's see, what do we have here? Dysthesia, that's one of them. And that's what this teacher had, dysthesia. She lacked the cognitive capacity to teach. All right, teacher. But anyway, you have to go out there and you have to change the world. You have to go out there and stop this nonsense from occurring. You have to teach teachers. You have to teach people who work with people that are trying to teach them stuff, how to teach correctly. People can learn. Anybody can learn. Don't tell me that they're profoundly retarded. A profoundly retarded person can learn. You go teach, and you go teach right. And you use temporal contiguity as one of those key things. You gotta have that close temporal contiguity. Let's take a break.